Trembling with fear, Moses returned to the mountain yet again. This time God delivered to him 10 commands, 10 timeless words. Treat me as your first and greatest priority. Do not make or worship idols. Don't abuse my name. Celebrate the 7th day of the week as a holiday, a holy day of rest. Respect your parents. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't covet what doesn't belong to you. That much God delivered to Moses, engraved on 2 slabs of rock. Then followed some very practical instructions, which covered such issues as employment, personal injury, property, social responsibility, equality of justice for all, annual holidays, hygiene, and diet. Moses wrote all these in a book, and then returned to the people and read them, every word. "We'll do everything that the Lord has said. We will obey," they agreed. Genuinely meant it at the time. 12 altars were constructed, 1 for each tribe. Bulls were sacrificed, their blood being sprinkled on the people as token of their agreement with the covenant and all that was written in Moses' book. Next day, 70 of the chief men of the people accompanied Moses part way up the mountain and saw firsthand a glimpse of the glory of God. Then Moses, taking Joshua, his young assistant, with him, headed to the top of the mountain, leaving Aaron in command of the people left in the valley. This time, God gave a blueprint for a mobile place of worship. Everything was to be portable and was described in meticulous detail: the tent, the perimeter fence, the altar, the furnishings, even the priest's clothing. The centerpiece was the ark, a gold-clad chest that was designed to house the rock slabs on which God had engraved the 10 commands. On its lid, there would be perched 2 awe-inspiring gold angels whose wings would touch overhead, providing a covering for a kind of throne, a representation of God's mercy and grace. The significance was doubtless that while the rock slabs would always stand in testimony against offenders, the mercy throne above would represent God's grace towards the offenders. God handed to Moses the 2 engraved rock slabs that the principle of mercy covering law was put to a severe test. Moses had been gone for 6 weeks. People were restless. It wasn't difficult to imagine that some mischief must have befallen their leader. The mountain didn't look a safe place for an old man. "So here we are, at the creek without a paddle. We've got no leader and no idea what God is really like. No clue where to find this land of promise. What we need is some kind of a flag, national symbol to hold us all together." They took their idea to Aaron, and then gave him a sack of gold trinkets for him to work with. The finished product was a clay model of a young bull covered with a veneer of gold that they'd all contributed, glittered in the sunlight. It dazzled them with its apparent virility and strength. They had each contributed something to it, and thereby derived a sense of ownership. "My gold ring's in there somewhere." The people were loud in their appreciation of Aaron's creativity. "This must be the God that delivered us from the Egyptians and led us here," suggested one admirer, taking too far his adulation of Aaron's handiwork. "Hold on a moment," protested Aaron. "That's not it at all. This is just a national emblem. God is the one who brought us here, and tomorrow we'll set aside time to worship him." Next day they all turned out for the worship service. But somehow God seemed extra invisible that day, less real, perhaps even irrelevant. True, the mountain still quaked, but by now they'd grown accustomed to it, and they no longer feared the one who shook the mountain. As soon as the worship service was done, they turned to the marvel which they themselves had created, the golden bull calf. Their admiration flared into adulation, and before you could repeat the second commandment, the whole nation was worshipping the image. Their behavior soon reflected their belief, For man is born to mirror. The glory of God the Creator, reflected in faithful family life, was traded for a man-made metal animal, mirrored in behavior beneath that of any bull, gold or otherwise. Up the mountain, God interrupted his dictation to Moses. Your people have become corrupt. Go down. The sight that confronted Moses caused him to seethe with anger. He flung down and smashed the rock slabs containing the commands, then stormed through the revelers and pushed over the calf and shattered it in the fire. But still the people danced. It was plain that they were running wild, way out of control. He had to get their attention. Who is on God's side? He yelled. A gang of men from Moses' own tribe, the Levites, ran over. Grab your swords and restore order. 3,000 people lay dead before the rule of law was re-established. Now he had their attention. What have you done, Aaron? The people gave me gold trinkets, which I melted in the fire, and out came this calf. Well, perhaps there was a small grain of truth in what he said, but then there often is in the origins of deviant religion. Moses took a rock and pounded the calf to powder. Then he made soup of it, mixing it in with water in a big pot. Now drink it, he roared at the people, and stood by till it was all gone. Presumably the idea was that when it reached the other end of their alimentary canals, the people would be able to look back and boast that it was all their own work, proudly worshipping their own excrement. Such is the folly of those who venerate their own accomplishments. The next day they all turned out for the worship service. But somehow God seemed extra invisible that day. With a red face, Moses went back up the mountain to face the God who had thundered, "Don't make or worship idols." "This is a stubborn people," God began. "Now get out of my way so that I may destroy them. I'll start afresh with you as the father of a new nation, and all the promises will be channeled through you." But Moses stood his ground. Then what would become of your reputation? God brought these people out of Egypt into the desert only to annihilate them? What? You'd be the laughingstock of the whole world. What of your promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Are you a promise breaker? No, God. You're going to blot out these people? Well then, blot me out first. Destroy them over my dead body. Extreme intercession. "Very well," said God. "I will keep my promises. Go ahead. Lead these people up to the land, and I will send an angel to help you conquer the people who are living there now. But I won't come with you, for if this kind of thing happens again, I might not be able to restrain my anger." "But Moses," God concluded, "I am very pleased with you." Then come with us. We'd rather be here with you in the desert than in the land of promise with only your angel for company." "It's okay, Moses. My presence will go with you. Be at peace." Then let me see you," blurted Moses, desperate for reassurance. "If you saw my face, you would die. But nevertheless, I will pass in front of you with my hand over your face till I'm past. Then you can see my back. And as I pass, I'll proclaim my name, so that while you may not see who I am, you may hear who I am." Faith has always been born from what the ears hear rather than what the eyes see. With a red face, next morning early, there was Moses, waiting expectantly in a cave high on the mountain. As the sun rose, a bright mist obscured the view, and a voice proclaimed, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, overflowing with love and faithfulness, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he is not so unjust as to leave guilt unpunished, but will let subsequent generations experience the consequences of the misdeeds of their fathers. And then the mist cleared. God gave Moses a replacement copy of the Ten Commands, and again reassured him that he would accompany them on their journey, as originally promised. When Moses came down the mountain this time, he was amazed at the reaction of the people. They looked at him as those seeing a ghost, and then fled. "What gives?" Moses inquired of Aaron. It's your face, brother. It's shining." So to avoid giving little children bad dreams, Moses took to wearing a veil. The months that followed were filled with God-inspired creativity. The mobile place of worship, the tabernacle as it became known, was constructed under the supervision of Bezalel, an artist from the tribe of Judah. Stung as they were by the recent mistakes of contributing their trinkets to the golden calf, they were now only too glad to contribute to the right cause. The outpouring of generosity was a thing of beauty. By the first anniversary of their exodus from Egypt, the tabernacle was complete. When every last detail was in its place, the cloud that had guided them by day, the flame that had led them by night, moved into the tent, filling the whole tabernacle with the glory of God. Much was made of the ordination of Aaron and his 4 sons as the first generation of priests. As a reward for having stood with Moses on the day of the riot during the golden calf incident, the men of the tribe of Levi were set apart as tabernacle assistants. But that wasn't the only reason. "Because I spared Israel's firstborn while I killed those of Egypt," God said, "therefore all Israel owes me their firstborn sons. By way of proxy, I accept the Levites, and from now on assign them to serve me in my tabernacle." While the instructions of how they were to perform their duties were somewhat stringent, those for the priests were exigent. 2 of Aaron's sons made the fatal mistake of deviating from the book when offering incense. The fire flared from their incense burners, and they were scorched to death on the spot. Be sure the remaining brothers were careful how they led worship from then on. However, jealousy tends to make light of caution. Korah, a Levite, had aspirations of becoming a priest. Together with a couple of buddies, Dathan and Abiram, he incited 250 other priest wannabes to protest against Moses' insistence on Aaron's monopoly. "Why do you want to set yourself up, Moses, as superior to the rest of us? What gives you the sole right to appoint your own family to the plum jobs? Everyone's holy, so everyone should have equal opportunity to be priests." "Don't let me stand in your way," retorted Moses. "By all means, bring incense burners and offer incense. Let's all meet tomorrow morning, and we'll see how God accepts your worship." So next morning, Korah was there with his 250 supporters. But since the gathering had been at Moses' suggestion, Dathan and Abiram refused to attend. They weren't going to be pushed around any longer by Moses, the dictator who dragged them from a land of security with false promises of milk and honey. Moses, who was the epitome of meekness, anything but a dictator, was deeply offended. Followed by a crowd, he went off to confront the 2 absentees. And there they were, defiantly squatting in their tents, refusing to come out to meet him. Moses turned to the crowd, who were uncertain what to think in the face of this potential vote of no confidence in his leadership. "Stand clear of their tents. If these people die of old age, then God didn't call me." The ground beneath their feet shook, then split open. Dathan and Abiram, together with their families, tents, and all their possessions, simply disappeared into the abyss. The crowd screamed and scattered. Meanwhile, the fire in the incense burners held by the 250 would-be priests suddenly flared and consumed those who held them. Shock stunned the whole camp that night. But by next day, dismay had given place to anger. "You have murdered God's people," they accused Moses and Aaron, as though the two leaders had themselves somehow perpetrated the appalling disasters of the previous day. Then the glory of God glowed red in the tabernacle, and a voice thundered, "Moses, Aaron, stand clear of these people, for I am about to annihilate them." Instead of running, the two brothers threw themselves down in an attitude of prayer. Even so, death started to sweep across the crowd like fire over a stubble field. "Quick," shouted Moses to Aaron, "take your incense burner and offer incense in the prescribed manner with fire from the altar." Aaron hurried, horror-driven, into the middle of the assembly, to the very place where the wave of death was to break next. There he took his stand in defiance of the angel of death. "Over my dead body!" he roared through clenched teeth. And the plague stopped. Aaron was left standing between the living and the dead. Intercession, the duty of the true priest. There they were, all profoundly shaken by the experience. But in case any question remained over exactly which tribe he had chosen as priests, God commanded that they all lay before the ark one representative staff from each tribe. Aaron's staff would represent the Levites. And the people approached the ark first thing the following morning. There were the 12 staffs, but the one belonging to Aaron was alive. During the night it had sprouted, budded, blossomed, and produced fruit, a crop of almonds. "Now keep that staff by the ark as a sign to the rebellious," God said. Those were days of swift and tough justice. It seemed that God was setting precedents to stress that he really meant what he said and intended to be obeyed by priests, Levites, and regular lay people alike. For example, 2 men got into a fight, and in his rage one blasphemed God's name. Command number 3 violated. Everyone who had heard the blasphemy was required to gather round to place a hand on the man's head and stand back to stone the offender to death. Another man was found gathering firewood on the Sabbath day. Command number 4, he also was stoned to death. Yes, there was not the slightest doubt that God meant it when he said, "Don't take my name in vain. Keep the Sabbath as a holy day of rest." These were not values to be assessed or negotiated. They were absolutes with life or death consequences. The tabernacle was first set up. The cloud lifted from the tent and moved to its accustomed place at the head of the column, ready to lead the Israelis forward. Camp was struck, and in careful order they set out, tribe by tribe. And that was the pattern they adopted as they proceeded during the days that followed. When they arrived in a location where they were to stay for more than an overnight, the cloud returned to the tabernacle. Then when it was time to move on, it moved to the head of the column. It's easy to overlook God's provision in normal circumstances and to give credit to nature. But in the daily life of the Israelis, Mother Nature could claim little credit for the miracles of constant provision. One might suppose that this obvious, direct dependence on God for everything, water, food, protection, and direction, might have fostered in the Israelis a more grateful attitude towards their benefactor. But such was not the case. The people complained about the inconvenience of living as nomads. They moaned about the food. "Back in Egypt we could eat meat and fish and a salad bar of vegetables, and all we get is this what's-its-name, manna, and we're just sick to death of manna." It started with a few malcontents, but quickly spread till everyone was grousing. "Give us some meat, Moses!" "I'll give them meat," God responded when Moses passed on their complaint. not just for a day or two, but for a whole month till the meat comes out of their noses. Moses, the pragmatist, reminded God of the sheer impossibility of providing meat for so many people for 30 days straight. "Just watch me," God responded. And that night, millions of quail migrating north from the Gulf of Aqaba settled around the camp, their tiny wings exhausted from their long flight. Next morning, it was simply a matter of picking them up. There was more meat than could be carried, a superabundance. A few million birds were plucked and gutted, no refrigeration, nothing but heat and flies. The stench was unimaginable. The meat stuck in their throats. Severe sickness resulted and many died. "You shall not covet," God had said, and the cemetery where they buried the resulting dead was forever after called Kibroth Hattaavah, graves of coveting. They had craved that which their circumstances would not stand. They had whinged till they'd had their way. Simple lack of hygiene killed them. Command number 10. But human beings are slow learners, and the menu continued to cause malcontents to gripe. Grumbling poisons gratitude, and a plague of venomous snakes slithered from the dust. Many died a painful death before they made the equation between their toxic words against God and the snakes that bit their ankles. It had been a snake in the original paradise that first libeled God with misleading Adam and Eve, and now only trusting God's true promises could reverse the damage. "Well, we have sinned, Moses," they confessed. "Pray for us." Moses made a bronze replica of a snake and nailed it to a pole in the middle of the camp. "If anyone is snake bitten, let him simply look at this bronze snake and he will live." God's punishment was always trumped by his mercy.